Let's select my 2025 reads. Greetings, my name is Nina. Welcome back to my channel. And my bookshelf looks a little messy right now, but that's because I took out some books that I want to read or want to reread in 2025. I do not make reading plans anymore because reading plans means that you stick to them, and I kind of fail to do that. I think I'm not that a good YouTuber because YouTubers tend to stick to their reading plans. Well, most of them. Well, there are multiple reasons that my reading plans change. Maybe I'm not interested, maybe not in the right mood, maybe I want to read something else, maybe I bought new books that excite me more, and blah blah blah. But nonetheless, there are some books that I want to read in 2025. So there are 4 piles of books in this video. One pile is my to read pile. It means that I'm reading these books for the first time. I've never read them before. The second pile is to read again. It means that I'm going to reread the books. And my third pile is also to read again, but in English. It means that I previously read these books in Russian and now I want to read them in English. And my fourth pile is books from the library pile. It means that these books that I have, I took from the library. So let's go through my first pile. It's to read pile, to read for the first time. Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin. I wanted to read this book this year. Didn't happen. So reading this in 2025. So this edition, this contains the first 4 books: A Wizard of Earthsea, The Tombs of Atuan, The Farthest Shore, and Tihanu. I do need to confess the reason I did not read the book, because I was afraid I was reading too much fantasy and I decided to slow down reading of fantasy a little bit, but now I feel that I'm ready for it. Next book is a book that I bought randomly. I've never heard of the book until I entered a bookstore and saw it. I liked the cover and I decided to go with the book. I haven't even heard booktubers talk about this book, Snow Globe by Soyoung Park. Soyoung, correct me if I'm wrong. This is a Korean author. This book was originally published in Korean in 2020. In English, it was translated in 2024. I fell for the annotation because here we have dystopia. Lots of cold. It's very cold. It's basically Narnia, but even worse. And then a young girl is selected to be a stand-in for a celebrity that dies, and she goes to this reality show to become a stand-in for the celebrity. The reality TV show behind the scene is nothing like you see on the screen. Definitely want to read this. Next comes the duology. It was supposed to be a trilogy, but unfortunately it didn't happen. These are the Parable books by Octavia E. Butler. The first one being The Parable of the Sower, and the second one being Parable of the Talents. So this is sort of a dystopia too. I actually like these editions very much. I think Parable of the Sower is a book that I'm definitely going to read really soon. The next 2 books I want to read are non-fiction books. The first one is a biography. Usually the biographies are the biographies of musicians or bands or both, or genres. This time I'm going to go for a biography of a writer, a really solid writer, and the writer is J.R.R. Tolkien. Tolkien and the Great War, The Threshold of Middle-earth by John Garth. As I understood from the title, this is his biography from the war years. Tolkien and the Great War tells for the first time the full story of how he embarked on creation of Middle-earth in his youth as the world around him was plunged into catastrophe. So this book goes through Tolkien's personal papers, like it says on the back. So when was this book published? This was published in 2003. It's not that old. I thought it was older. This isn't my first time going through Tolkien's biography. The first time was watching that Tolkien biopic, and it wasn't really good. It was a so-so film. It didn't focus on the right things, and the second non-fiction is an essay, and it's A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. I finally got a Virginia Woolf book, and I wanted to get this for a long time. I thought of buying the book in English. It was way too expensive. I saw this book in the library and I wanted to get it, but the first time I wanted to get this, it wasn't in the library. And the second time I realized that I'm not in the mood for an essay, because when you take a book from the library, your time is limited, and I did not want to force myself to read something, so I got myself my own copy so I can take it at any time I want. So yeah, the books from Virginia Woolf that I saw in the store were also Mrs. Dalloway and Orlando and To the Lighthouse, but I wanted this one. Really want to know what this is all about. Then we go to sci-fi, and then we go to Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I am familiar with Andy Weir's work. Previously, I read The Martian, and it was really funny. And as I understand that this book is also really funny, and I hope it's fast-paced. And what's most importantly, I hope that it's understandable, because it's difficult for me to read sci-fi because of those technical stuff that is present in sci-fi. But in this book, we have a duet of two guys, and this has to be really funny. So I have hopes for this book. So next, the book is A Watership Down by Richard Adams. Heard a lot about this book, and I still remember this line from The Talisman by Stephen King and Peter Straub. Oh, what would Richard be like if he had The Lord of the Rings and The Watership Down on his shelves, or something like that? I do not remember the exact quote. So Stephen King and Peter Straub put Lord of the Rings and The Watership Down in the same sentence, and I wanted to read The Watership Down ever since. I thought of getting an English version, but I'm glad I got myself the Russian one. Well, speaking of Stephen King, here we have the last book. Well, he wrote it along with his son, Owen, and the book is Sleeping Beauties. So the story is set in a town where all women fall asleep. And what would happen if that happened? Gonna find out in this book. The cover is actually pretty nice. Alright, that was my to read pile. Now let's go to my to reread pile. I really want to reread my favorite books. I really want to reread them. The Neverending Story by Michael Ende. Whenever I talk about The Neverending Story, I do like to say that it has the traits of your standard fantasy. Go there, save this person, find this thing, yada yada yada. It's a quest, but at the same time, there it's so much fun, and there's a lots of philosophical dialogue here. Yeah, it's a good mixture of your standard adventure and some deep philosophical questions. I want to revisit the book, and the third book over here is The Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. This is the first book, The Way of Kings. So I know that this December, Brandon Sanderson released the Stormlight Archive's fifth novel, The Knights of Wind and Truth. It's going to take a year to translate the book in Russian, and I have decided that in meantime I can reread the first four books. One thing that I remember about the Stormlight Archive now, after I've read all four books, is that I enjoyed the first two much more than I did the third and fourth. Yeah, it's a really grandiose plan for 2025, but I will try to finish the book before I get a fifth one in my hands. I'm definitely waiting for the translation, and I want a physical copy. I do not want a Kindle version. I need to have the Stormlight Archive on my shelves. Now let's go to my to read pile in English. So there are only four books, and I read all of them in Russian. Now I want in English. So the very first one is Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix by J.K. Rowling. When I finished the Goblet of Fire, I thought, maybe I should continue the series, but then I paused for a multitude of reasons. Order of the Phoenix is the darkest book in the series. It's big and really dark. And then, spoiler alert, serious. Yeah, I know. And above all, Umbridge. People mistrust Harry. They mistreat him. Harry is not himself in the book for understandable reasons. Then Sirius. Well, you know, if you know, you know. And Umbridge happens to everybody here. Umbridge happens and everyone hates her. Yeah, it's kind of difficult to read about Umbridge. Yeah, no, this is going to be a challenge. This is going to be a challenge. Moving on. Actually, this is the book that I don't think that I will manage to read in 2025. I don't know, but I want to read it all the same. And this is The Shining by Stephen King. So, fact, when I went to my trip to Italy, I brought 8 books, and this is the only book that I did not read. Well, technically, I still have The Lottery by Shirley Jackson, but I'm reading that book slowly. I did not intend to read it at once, so that doesn't count. So this is the only unread book from all 8 books. To be honest, I do not like that the cover is greenish. It should be blue because it's set during winter. Well, I have the Hodder edition of Misery, and it's wintry like it's supposed to be, and this book should be wintry too. But nonetheless, I do still like this edition. Going to go with it. And the last 2 books are the Roald Dahl books, Matilda and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. These are the books from my childhood, and I do really like these editions. They are so pretty. But unfortunately, after I bought these books, I found out really unlikely thing about the books. I do not think that it was exactly the correct decision. So these are the Proofing Books editions. This is from Penguin Random House. I found out that they decided to edit the books to take out offensive words. Okay, I do understand that the classic books, they feature some really unlikely moments, stuff that did not age well. I understand that, but I do not think that editing works here. Maybe that's a controversial thing to say, but it's what it is, I guess. Okay, changing some words, that would be okay, but they took out entire paragraphs from the books, and well, the good thing is that I do not remember all the exact moments from the book, so I will tolerate it. So, but I do still love these stories anyway, and I love the film adaptations of these books. When I say film adaptation of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, I mean the 2005 adaptation. And finally, we have the books from the library. So the first one is The Rolling Stone Interviews by Jan S. Venner and Joe Levy. Jan S. Venner and Joe Levy. The Rolling Stone Interviews. So this book consists of interviews with various famous people throughout 40 years. So they have been interviewing people for 4 decades, and this is what they got. So we have Pete Townsend, Jim Morrison, John Lennon, Ray Charles, who else? George Lucas, Tina Turner, Axl Rose, Kurt Cobain, Mick Jagger, Patti Smith, Bob Dylan and Ozzy Osbourne, Keith Richards, Eminem, and a lot of others. Not that I'm a fan of all of these people, but I do love interviews. And these people, they have something to say, so this is going to be really interesting to read. This book actually focuses on famous people of different kinds. Actors, directors, and even politicians. But I focused mostly on the musicians. After all, I'm in for the music stuff. If you've seen my previous videos, you know that music is my drug, kinda. And I love books with musical themes, and I love interviews with musicians, the biographies, and everything. The one book over here is The Librarian of Auschwitz by Antonio Iturbe. This was originally published in Spanish. I will not say anything else. I'm just going to put the book away. Call Me By Your Name by Andre Asiman. And that's all. These are all the books that I want to read in 2025. That's just the physical copies. I also have books on my Kindle. What are the books that you want to read? Let me know down in the comments. See you next time. Goodbye.